Hey everyone, this is Dennis with another real estate investor roundtable. And today, boy, do I have a special guest. By the way, if you're watching this on YouTube and at some point you like this video, I would love if you share and share with your friends and like it so that we get more views. This is going across lots of my channels. And most of the people that are going to be watching it are in the real estate space. And sometimes they're not just in the real estate space, they're in the creative real estate space. Now, people that watch this, Steve, could be agents, could be investors, could be private money lenders, could be gators, could be people that are just like, you know what? I just want to get into real estate. So, with that said, I wanted everybody to meet Steve Haring. Steve has been a good friend of mine for a while. He's a leader in the PA area. And how about I just let Steve give a little background about himself, talking about what activities and what massive actions he's taking up in his area. Steve, go ahead, man. Tell us about it.
I appreciate the introduction, Dennis. So, my name is Stephen Haring. I am a real estate investor in the Pocono Mountains, Pennsylvania. So, that would be Northeast Pennsylvania. So, Monroe County, Lehigh County, Northampton County, those are the primary counties that I focus in the state of Pennsylvania. So, as far as my journey, I've been a full-time real estate investor for little over 2 years now, but we'll kind of rewind it, so I could give the story of how I got into this space.
Love
So
it. Love it.
before,
Love it.
yeah,
So let's rewind. Do you want to go back to actually when you had a W 2 job? Let's
yeah,
let's rewind
that's
it
that.
all the way back, and talk about you're working a W 2 job, and you're like, oh, this is not what I want to do. They want to do something
Yeah,
else.
that's gonna be a funny story. So the last W-2 job I had was at a company called Web.com. It was a billion-dollar company that owned a bunch of subsidiary brands like Network Solutions, Register.com, Yodel. Network Solutions, it was the first domain registrar, so it's similar to GoDaddy. And I was a business consultant for the company where I would consult with domain and website owners all across the globe on their online presence. So as I was working for for that company, I did quite well for myself, a six-figure earner, President's Club award winner, for being a top consultant within the company. But I was just miserable, because the company I was working for, I felt like my moral compass wasn't aligning with the company's values, right? And I started to feel like, the company was prioritizing profits over taking care of their clients and their employees. And most importantly, I felt trapped in the corporate rat race, right? I just felt like, you know, as much as I achieved my goal of being able to make the money that I was making at that time, mentally and spiritually, I just wasn't happy. I didn't feel like the job was fulfilling, my internal destiny. And so around December 2019, I remember sitting down with my wife and, I'm like, man, I really can't stand working for this company anymore. I had some disagreements with, how how management was handling the operations of our department. And so I sent out an email CCing the CEO of the company on some of my ideas that I had in mind to improve the department, knowing that the managers and supervisors within that department weren't really going to be fond of that email. So I knew the retaliation at that time was going to be that they were going to, try to fire me, because I remember sitting down with my wife saying, listen, I want to quit. And she's like, well, why would you quit? You have a lot of money saved up. let them fire you and, collect unemployment. And so I sent that email strategically, knowing that the retaliation was going to be them, firing me. And they did. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because it freed me from my W-2. It gave me additional, um, income with unemployment, to be able to fund the businesses that I wanted to start at the time. And it allowed me to chase my dream, being a full-time entrepreneur. And mind you, this was December of 2019, right before the pandemic hit.
Oof.
So I'm entering full-time entrepreneurship right as the world just blew up in chaos, right?
Yeah.
And so I always
So,
knew that. Yeah, I'm
so
sorry. Yeah,
let me ask you some questions. Kind of like you're
yeah.
doing a great job, by the way. Love it. So when it comes to your situation, would you say you were burning all of the boats, or were you kind of like at a point where you could still come back if things did not work in pursuing your entrepreneur interests?
I wanted to, approach the Tony Robbins way, right? I wanted to burn all the boats.
Hmm.
I knew if I put in my 2 weeks, you know, that would keep the window open or the door open to return. But at that time, I was just so fed up with, just everything that was going on within the company, the the direction of the organization, the direction of the leadership, and I wanted to go out my own way. I wanted to burn all the boats. I didn't want no ability to be able to come back at any time. And most importantly, I wanted to better myself. That was the biggest thing, because for me, in my position, most of my consulting was on the phone, right? So imagine being a top sales performer and never meeting the person on the other line physically,
Mm,
right? So the biggest learning experience working for that company and being able to produce the way I did was, if I'm selling for a Fortune 500 company and doing it over the phone, I could take that same skill set and apply it to any other industry and be just as successful, right?
love
And
it.
this is how like we can connect it to the direct to seller, right? And the marketing and sales of real estate investing. But
So many
then
people, so many people don't realize that their W 2 can be potentially leveraged as a superpower as a transition into the real estate space. Now, when it comes to real estate, right? You have a path, I have a path, a lot of different people have a path. In today's market, what you went through, would you recommend burning the boats for somebody who's like looking at it and saying, I'm just sick and tired of my job? Or would you say that you have to be more careful in today's market because we are in inflationary times? Quantitative easing has really caused a havoc on our economy. Everybody's talking about people are not able to find cash flowing properties anymore. It's no longer 2019. What would you say to yourself today or to somebody that came to you and asking for advice today?
I would say everyone's situation is different, right? Some individuals are single, some have spouses, some have children or kid, or one child. Everyone's situation is different. You have to look at your situation and evaluate it, and then determine your course of action based on your unique situation. For me, and speaking of myself, I was planning on an exit. I saved, you know, I I lived a very modest lifestyle based on how much money I was making working for that company. So I was able to save money. I didn't know at the time what I was going to do with it, right? But I wanted to save enough money, and I knew at that time I wanted to make sure I burned all the boats. I didn't want no opportunity to go to have the ability to go back. And
So
so,
when it comes to essentially you transitioning out, so real estate was not even something that was in your radar at that point.
No, it actually
Wow.
was. Yeah,
Jeez.
it actually it actually wasn't. It was, like wow, like when I didn't know what I wanted to do, right? But I knew if I just had the peace of not having to focus on a W-2 and really like devote my mental energy towards that job, it would give me enough clarity to be able to find my way, right?
So
I
you
always
had to kind of find yourself essentially, right? As part of this transition.
exactly.
There's people that talk about, you could do it in your 20s, you could do it in your 30s, do it in your 40s. I think the problem is with a lot of people when they try to essentially find themselves or to find their next purpose, they're so overloaded with life, right? If they have kids, as you mentioned, if they have essentially crushing debt, house, car payments, so forth. And it's actually very interesting how you did not really have that direction yet. And ultimately, there are people that are like, you know what, I am making X in my W-2, I'm making X in my side hustle. I think I'm just going to transition to my side hustle. But that was in your case. So how did you land on real estate?
So, uh, so right after 2019, when I ventured off on my own, pandemic hit. I at that time, right before the pandemic hit, I was focused on my my mental and physical health, right? Because I knew after working a grueling job for that corporation, I really needed to reset my internal compass, and I wanted to focus on getting my health right, my mind and my body. And so the first venture that I did as soon as I, you know, was focused on being an entrepreneur full time was I launched a plant-based brand, right? And that kind of coincided with the pandemic, right? And as the pandemic was in full swing, I was like, well, listen, I've always wanted to get into real estate and investing in real estate in general, but you always hear the same barriers of entry that people feed you, right? Well, to be in real estate, you got to have a lot of money or you got to have your real estate license, right?
And
Those
that's
are
in
the
any
top
market,
two.
right? That's in any
a-
market.
Any,
That's
yeah, any
2019,
market.
2001, doesn't matter,
Yeah.
right? That's kind of like, you hear things such as like my uncle got into real estate, he lost his shirt and he lost my shirt. Now I'm shirtless, right? Why would you do this? Why would you go through that? Maybe you went to college and you have all of those essentially benefits to go back into W-2. Like, everybody's situation is going to be different. And I think that it's very interesting how you had time to really sort of understand what path that you're going. So, was your first real estate venture, was it a flip? Was it a wholesale deal? Was it
Yeah.
buying just regular and putting tenants in it?
So I was scrolling through Instagram, and this was towards the end of 2020. And I saw a video of one of my first mentors. His name is Domar Cross. He actually has a show on A&E called Zombie House Flipping. And he has a wholesale education program called Real Advisors. And I stumbled upon his video and him talking about investing in real estate with little to no money, right? I didn't know it was called wholesaling at the time, but I tapped on the video and I'm like, wow, this looks really interesting. This looks like not even legal, right? And so I, it definitely intrigued me because I'm like, man, this can't be true. Like, you don't need a license, you don't need a lot of money to invest in real estate. So I ended up signing up for his 3-day virtual event. And so I attended the event with my wife. My wife's like, yeah, let's do it. This sounds really interesting. Let's do it together. And did the 3-day event, went through. how to wholesale from A to Z. And then I signed up for his mentorship. It was a 6-month mentorship. And in his mentorship, he has a lot of other coaches that are, 6-figure a month wholesale coaches. And some of them are like Steven Morales, who was on the Closers Olympics. He used to participate, and this year he was a judge. So, that's who I learned my acquisitions from. And then as soon as I joined that mentorship, that's when I started focusing on being a full-time real estate investor. Now, the crazy part is before I even joined the mentorship, I had my plant-based brand that I just launched, and a lot of my money was tied up to that. And I remember being in that 3-day event with my mentor, Domal Cross, and him talking about, hey, this mentorship's $8,000. And I'm like, oh man, like I literally got so much money tied up to this, my other brand. My wife, who I can't thank enough, she's like, listen, like I'll help you, get into the mentorship. She's like, I believe in you enough in your skill set that I know if you join this mentorship, I know you're going to be successful. And, so she was a big part
Mhm.
financially and support wise of me being able to take the leap and focus on doing real estate investing full time. And so, I definitely want to give her a lot of, you know, props and a big shout out because without her, and her support, I don't know where I would be today. And so, with that in
Cool.
mind, as soon as I joined that, I'll talk about my first deal. About to get into
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Good.
As soon as
That's my next question.
I joined yeah, as soon as I joined the mentorship, I wanted to focus on doing my first deal in my wife's hometown. It's called Reading, Pennsylvania. And the reason why I chose her hometown was she grew up in poverty, right? She didn't grow, her family, we have our lot, like both our families are not financially literate. And so her growing up in poverty and struggling in that city, I wanted to really make my first deal symbolic for our family, because I figured in my mind, if I can get my first deal in her hometown, I can prove that you aren't a product of your environment. You can manifest from that and become something greater. And so I ended up getting my first wholesale deal. I believe I closed that deal in June of 2021, I would say. It's been so many since then, but that
Mhm.
was like a $10,000 check. And as soon as I got my reality check, that changed everything for me because I was like, this is real. And my very first deal, it being a wholesale deal, additional assignment of contract, I actually double closed on that deal because the seller of that property was actually a real estate agent. And when I approached him to wholesale the property and assign the deal to an end buyer, he was like, nope, I don't work with wholesalers. I don't want you to assign the deal. You got to be the buyer for the deal, right? And
Right.
he put another,
Just for
yeah,
anybody here.
yeah, yeah. Go
Good.
ahead, Dennis.
So for everybody here who doesn't know what a double close is that it's basically when you go to a title company and you close on the property. So you actually take possession of the property and then you go and you close it again off to a buyer. Now, Steve, I'm sure people are dying to know, how did you find your first deal in Reading, Pennsylvania?
So I was on the phones on beast mode, cold calling myself. No
Uh-huh.
VA. I pretty much I pulled the list of absentee owners, skip traced it, uploaded it to my dialer, and I was just cold calling every day, right? Because in this business, it's a numbers game. And that applies to all aspects of this business. The more offers you're putting out, the more likely you are to get an offer accepted. The more sellers you're talking to directly, the more likely you're going to find a motivated seller who's looking to sell their property. This business, real estate, is a numbers game. And so I got on the phones and I was like, listen, I was in the trenches calling, being told, F you, I don't want to sell my property. Next, don't call me again. Take me off your list. Next, right? You're a
Mhm.
scammer. Next. until I found the one seller who happened to be an agent, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm interested in selling this property, right? It's in mid renovation. I stopped the renovation. I guess for whatever reason he couldn't finish the reno, and but he was against wholesaling it. And so the other wrench that he threw into that deal was he was like, you need to do the inspection before we signed the contract, the AB
Mm-hmm.
contract. And when you're wholesaling a deal, as you know, Dennis, and I'll explain this for the audience, is that when you are in the AB contract, when you're wholesaling a deal, you want to put an inspection period because that will be your marketability period, right? To market the contract to your end buyer.
Mm-hmm.
So without that inspection period, there's really no way for me to back out of the agreement if I can't find a buyer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, man, I don't know how I'm going to get around that. Plus, the agent was asking for $1,000 earnest money deposit.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to get around this one. So I remember speaking to my mentor, and she's like, yeah, because the EMD is so high, at that time, she's like, I wouldn't recommend going through with that contract. So I'm like, you know what, it is what it is. I'm gonna get back on the phone. And so I got on the phone again, and as I'm cold calling, I speak to another at the time I thought would be a property seller. It just so happened to be the buyer for that deal. I'm like,
Oh
hey,
wow.
listen, are you interested in selling this property? He's like, no, but I'm looking to buy a property in this neighborhood, and it just so happened to be the same neighborhood that the
Oh.
agent was selling the property in. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get creative. I told the buyer, I'm like, hey, listen, how about we do this? I have a property that you may be interested in, but I need you to do the walkthrough with me. So you'll come to the property with me, you'll do the walkthrough, and if you're good with the property, then I'll agree to all the agent's terms. No inspection period, $1,000 EMD because I already have my buyer committed to the deal. I brought the buyer with me, we did the inspection, I signed the AB contract, and then I double closed on the property, which means I closed under my entity, right, for the on the AB side, and then I sold it to the end buyer on a double close the same day on the BC side.
Gotcha.
And
And that's where you got the taste of what's possible, right? They
yeah,
always say your first deal is the most important one. And I just want to highlight this for everyone here is that when you put anything in place, like it's kind of like Thomas Edison, right? As they say, he tried 1,000 different ways to identify how not create a light bulb, but 1,001 he did, and it kind of erased history, right? And build a prosperous future where we all have electricity. So the same concept here is that the moment that you can see that you get a deal, it's an infection. From there, you can just do this over and over and over and over again. So you mentioned that you've done tons of deals since then. What was the most funnest deal that you've done and the most complicated deal that you've done?
wow, that's an interesting one. I would say the most fun. I always say the first deal is it's always has that significance, right? Because
Hmm.
it's we call that a reality check. It's
Hmm.
your just how it sounds. It's reality that you can make money in this business, right? When you get
Did
that
you
check, you're
frame?
like,
Did you frame the check? Did you frame the check on your
uh,
wall?
yeah, I wish I probably have it around somewhere, but I didn't frame it. I didn't frame it on my wall. I took a picture with my son in front of the property, and that's kind of what I framed, right? Because
Awesome.
my oldest son, who's 12, he was with me at the closing table, so
Mm.
it was extra special. And so, yeah, I would say that the first deal, but I've like my deals now, I mean, my average assignment fees, I believe last time I checked it was like almost 21 grand, my average assignment fee. At this point, I always tell wholesalers focus on the quality of your deals instead of the quantity, right? Because whenever you're doing wholesale deals, if let's just say you're doing, 5 deals a month, but you're only averaging $2,000 per deal, that's 10,000, right? But you're doing more work than someone who's doing one deal and their assignment fee is 15,000, right? Because you have acquisitions, you have dispositions, you have, transaction coordination, right? You have all these different aspects of the business that if you don't have a team, you're wearing multiple hats and you're doing all of this work times the quantity that you're doing. So focus on the quality, focus on the better deals to maximize your assignment fees, so you're working smarter, not harder, in this business.
Excellent point. And when it comes to today's market, somebody that's watching this that's like, you know what, I'm gonna burn the boats. I have a wife or a spouse that can help me and support me to find myself and then get involved in, if it's real estate. I mean, if they're watching this video, it will be real estate, right? So my question for you is, are you still of the belief that somebody can start with day one today and still be successful as a wholesaler in today's changing marketplace?
100%. I mean, this business is all about just taking action, right? Like, it's that simple. It sounds cliche when you hear it constantly, but it's the truth, right? It doesn't take much to be successful besides just getting better, 1% better every day, and just taking the step forward. Whether you're failing forward or you're succeeding forward, it doesn't matter. As long as you're trying to move forward, it's always going to be better than someone who has, you know, um, analysis paralysis, and they're stuck in their own mind about how to begin and how to start their journey. So as long as you're willing to take action and you're not someone that takes in content in the form of entertainment instead of education and applying it to be successful, you're going to do just fine in this business. Because there's a lot of people who they attend these conferences, and they get on these live virtual events, and they're really there just to network per se, and then just be present in the moment. But if you're not taking action with the education you're receiving when you're at these events, whether it's in person or online, it just becomes education at that,
Yeah,
entertainment at that point,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And so
If you're not taking action, things are not going to happen. You can't just manifest something falling in your head. If, however, you are part of a community, we'll talk about it here in a moment. But before we do that, Steve, we do want to get your feedback of what's the most complicated deal that you've done to date. Can you talk about that?
the most complicated, I would say, was a recent sub two deal. And it wasn't complicated in the sense of the structure of the sub two deal, which is a subject to, where you're taking over the existing loan of a property. It was the circumstances around the deal, right? The seller was really sick. He is in poor health and financial condition. And during this deal, the seller went ghost for like 2 weeks. Couldn't find the seller. Tried to track the seller down by calling him, leaving voicemails, text messages. So we were unsuccessful. So we had to turn it up a notch. So one of the wholesalers that we ended up paying $15,000 to, I told the wholesaler, and I said, listen, we got to start some type of like FBI surveillance program to find this guy, right? We need to call every hospital in the area and see if we can figure out where he is. Hopefully, he's still alive. God forbid, we don't want anything to happen to him, but we got to track him down, right? Because foreclosure on the property was scheduled for June 29th, I believe, which was, not too long ago. And we're like almost like middle of June trying to find this guy, right? And so I told one of the wholesalers, like, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to come up with this. We're going to formulate a plan. We're going to have you just park on the side of his house, like your FBI, seeing if he's pulling into the property,
Mhm.
right? Unsuccessful. We saw a vehicle in the driveway that didn't belong to him. So what we did was we looked up the driver's plate, the plate number to see who the car belonged to, and we ended up finding that it belonged to his brother who lived in the same HOA, the same, community as him. So we got in contact with the brother, who the brother then told us that he was fine. And then we ended up getting reconnected with the seller. Now, besides the seller going ghost, the seller multiple time, the seller during the entire sales process didn't trust the wholesalers in the deal. He felt based in on his health condition that he was being taken advantage of. Now, this was my moment based on my life experience to really connect with the seller because my mom growing up was in and out of the hospital, and that put my family behind mortgage payments, and my childhood home was actually lost in foreclosure.
For a while.
And so I remember when I reconnected with the seller, when I walked in, the seller was like, "I don't even care about losing the house anymore." The seller looked at me, he's like, "I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. Nobody has the empathy for the situation that I'm going through." He's like, "I don't care about money at this point." He's like, "I'm worrying about living." And so I sat him down at the kitchen table and I'm like, "Listen, I understand what you're going through. As a kid, I watched my mom go through health issues that forced my family to lose our childhood home. And what's so painful now as an adult is the knowledge that I know today. I didn't have someone like me and my partners who are also sub 2 members to be able to help my mom in that situation like we were trying to
That'd be
help
good.
this seller in his situation, right? And so we ended up,
I think
with
we're
my
having some.
story and my yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you were breaking up there for a moment, but very
Yeah.
interesting story.
But yeah, yeah. So I used my childhood story, my childhood home foreclosure story to really connect with the seller in a really deep personal level. And I remember him looking at me and saying, "Thank you. You understand." And that
Wow.
I believe saved the deal. He was cooperative to the point where I would pick him up multiple times to take him to the notary and give him some money for medication, and but that was really hard. It was hard because of all the variables in the deal, his health issues, him going ghost, you know, him I didn't mention this, but him wanting more money for his furnishing, you know, uh, just there was just so many complexities with the deal that had nothing to do with the actual deal itself as far as paperwork was concerned. It was just the
Hmm.
life aspect of the deal itself that made it really complicated. And I spent so
Hmm.
much time traveling back and forth to his house to see if he was home, and he wasn't home. It was just a lot. It was a lot mentally to go through for myself because I saw a lot of parallels to my own childhood, story. But yeah,
Got you. No, no, it's very good that you're able to help out this individual, get him to a better place. He did
yeah,
not have to go through pre-foreclosure. He made a little bit of money, but it wasn't really even about the money part. So before we went and talked about this deal, we briefly touched upon community. And me and you both met at Sub 2 and under Peace Morby, and he's building this very large community. Since you joining Sub 2, what has changed how you look at real estate? How do you acquire deals? Did anything change since the time that you got involved into, which I don't know if Delmar Cross had a community or not. I know Sub 2 definitely does. So would you mind
yeah.
commenting on that?
So Domar does have a community. but sub two is different. Sub two, joining sub two really accelerated my mindset change on collaboration over competition. I've I've met my, partners on deals that I've added to my portfolio. Justin Tumanowski, Ted Miller, Ben Pekarsky, right? Sam Jevitt, right? There's just and these are people that I met through Sub Two, right? That has changed my whole outlook on the importance of collaborating and really living and breathing the community mindset. And I would say, that's a really a testament to, the power of Sub Two and the the ideologies that Pace has, right? Like, so I want us to salute Pace for sure because like I would say the biggest takeaway that I've had in Sub Two was that mindset change. And as soon as that switch went on, like my real estate investment journey has been that much better.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at it, is that, and I've been in sub 2+ years. I've built a network of people that I constantly continue building relationships, private money lenders, people that bring me deals. It's kind of like when we first started discussing, it's having that community aspect to essentially bring you those things together. And potentially, then it's almost like having a parachute if you structure correctly. With that said, I wanted to shift a little gears to talk about a community that you started building, and it's a community that I'm actually going to be part of and helping you to continue to build. Manifest Investors. In fact, we're having a live meetup in September 13th. It's a Wednesday. Talk a little bit more about this community. Who is it targeted to, and how are you taking what you learn in Sub Two and applying it inside this community?
Yeah, so our community that Dennis and I with other investors and agents are building together, it's called Manifest Agents. And the community is driven on building the best investor friendly agent network possible, right? I realized early on, and when I got into Sub Two, that there's a need of a network of investor friendly agents. And how I started to realize this was I would go into my local real estate investor groups and I would always see posts like I'm looking for an investor friendly agent in Philadelphia or in Pittsburgh or in Memphis, Tennessee. All these groups that I would be a part of, I would see the same post over and over again. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, wow, there's not a community of just investor friendly agents on Facebook,
Mhm.
right? And it's just business 101, right? You see a need, you fill it. But here's the other thing too. As I joined Sub Two, one of the biggest objections when you're doing direct to agent or agent outreach was their lack of education on creative financing. They think subject to deals are illegal. A lot of brokerages tell their agents not to touch them because they just don't understand how it works. And I said to myself, like, with building a community of investor friendly agents, we can educate agents on creative financing, show them the proof of concept that subject to is in fact legal, right? Teach them that wholesalers aren't the scum of real estate, right? If you network with the right wholesalers, they could help bring additional revenue, right, to you as an agent, right? Let's just say you're working with, cash buyers, investors that are looking for off-market properties. You as an agent should want to work with wholesalers, right? You should want to network with wholesalers. The reason why you don't is because you don't know how to talk to wholesalers, right? That's the problem, and you don't know how wholesaling works. So there's it. Yeah.
And they also wholesalers don't know how to bring it to an agent and strike a deal out of it, right? Because traditionally, full disclosure, I'm a real estate agent. I'm not active licensed right now, but my loving wife is. She's a star agent here in South Jersey, and she's with EXP. And what I would say is that I've been licensed since 2000. Thought it was 99, but apparently it's 2000. And throughout my career, the real estate board requires that you use real estate approved contracts for any kind of transactions. And when it comes to working with wholesaler, that's where the disconnect is, because the state of New Jersey, even today, it's not legal to assign a property unless you close on it. There's other states actually that do allow that, such as Florida. But in New Jersey, if it's traditional real estate contract, you actually have to close on the property. So when it comes to working with a real estate agent, there's a major disconnect from a brokerage level all the way down to the agent, because brokers are the ones that are educating and teaching them. EXP is coming more around to it. They're still far away for being a completely investor friendly agency, but what's good about it is that people like you and me can come in and educate those communities. And actually, just want to give a quick plug. Recently, I was actually meeting with a local investment group. They are traditional, what we call wholesalers, but they do other assets involvement as well, such as multifamily and real estate, potentially fix and flips. And I spent a while educating them on creative. And what really is interesting to me, everybody can go watch a video about creative financing. And I do feel like that people want to really dive in a little deeper. Because whenever you watch a video, you're very general, you're not very specific to an area. Creative financing is completely different in New Jersey versus PA versus Florida, Florida versus Texas. So it is completely different. And I think, Steve, with us putting this community together, we can actually really help agents who unfortunately today are struggling to find opportunities for their customers, whether it's on a buy or sell side. Because there's not enough inventory, and the rates have spiked, so people are not traditionally moving unless they have a need, essentially, either, let's say, relocation, divorce, death, or life in general, right? So people are not moving. And also, when it comes to real estate agents who are working with buyers, they're not really fully educated and experienced how to find a property that's off market that is potentially going to fit a model that you can sell to an end buyer, whether it's for cash or even traditional financing. And in some cases, it could be creative as well, where the financing can be even more simplistic. So, with that said, this community is definitely going to be something I'm going to be very involved in, very happy to be involved in. And what can people experience if they want to find out more? And also, please talk about the event that's happening September Wednesday 13th.
Yeah, so as far as joining our community, it's free. We're not going to charge you for education, for the resources that we develop ourselves. The biggest thing that one of the other biggest takeaways from the sub two community is really being a go-giver and understanding that you don't need to have the size of a sub two community to really have an impact in real estate, right? I think the future of branding and networking is developing a community for that you collaborate with others on. And so our plans with Manifest Agents is to provide documents and resources, to host educational Zooms to teach you how to wholesale, how to, do direct to seller, talk to sellers, how to be direct to agents and do agent outreach, which is the astro flipping model, and many other topics, so we have a lot of Zooms that are currently in our roadmap that we've announced within the community. We are hosting quarterly meetups, which there are early plans to start expanding elsewhere. As we start bringing in other leaders in other markets, they will begin hosting their own meetups under the Manifest Agents brand. But as far as our meetup that Dennis is referring to, we have a meetup in the Poconos coming up on Wednesday, September 13th at 6:30 p.m. We Our last meetup was really successful. We provide food. It's the we have like it's called a hideaway, but we pretty much rent out the bottom of a huge like brewery in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. So it's a really nice, amazing setting to have our meetups. We have a photo booth to take pictures. We have professional photography and videography to really help boost your social media presence as well when you're at our events. And we host special guest speakers, so we have Mario coming out as one of our guest speakers. Mario uh, Lencioni, I believe that's how we pronounce it, right?
We're both going to botch it. It's Lencioni, I
Yeah.
believe.
Okay. Yeah, that's that Italian way of saying it. Excuse me, Mario. Don't be upset when you see this. I got love for you, bro. So, but
Yes.
Mario's awesome. He is one of he's a sub two leader. In the Jersey market, he's accumulated over $15 million in his real estate portfolio in less than 6 years, which is like absolutely epic. So he's going to be talking about his journey, his real estate investment tips and how he was able to really accumulate that size of a portfolio in such of a short period of time. And most importantly, we're just going to network and share resources. I always tell people whenever they come to our meetups, the number one objective when you leave the meetup is to focus on doing business with the people that are in the room, make money and collaborate with each other. If we're not doing deals with each other, we're not collaborating, the meetups are a failure in my eyes, right? Because I look at our time and how time is the most valuable thing we have on this planet. And if we're all taking time away from our personal lives to come to these meetups, the biggest takeaway should be the collaboration that leads to some type of revenue generating activity. And so that's what I like our meetups to really focus on. Now, with the Manifest Agents model, our goal is to educate agents so they're not living a commission to commission lifestyle. The thing with brokerages are designed to have you live commission to commission. Many brokerages don't teach agents how to be investors because if agents learn how to be investors, well, they're going to focus on achieving financial freedom, and that's going to lead them to no longer working with that brokerage anymore. That's in some way, And so our goal with Manifest Agents is to break that chain, right? Because if you're just an agent and you're focused on just having commission breath and focusing on listing the listing, you are living a rat race in itself. We want to teach agents how to work with investors, to how to think like investors, because we want to help mold the agent of the future. And that is what we're focusing on with Manifest Agents. Now, other professionals benefit from that. Wholesalers will have a dedicated place to connect with investor friendly agents in their markets. Right now, we started out in Pennsylvania. But the goal is to have investor-friendly agents in as many states as possible, to have leaders in those states, right? And just really help, focus on growing the community organically, and it's this is a marathon, not a sprint. I always tell people, like, whenever you focus on building a community, if you're looking for instant success, this is not for you. And Dennis, you know this because you got how many groups you've dedicated your time to growing, right?
Yeah, too many to count. But what I will say
Yeah,
is that this is going to be a place where people who are in the real estate agent space, who are licensed real estate agents, they'll finally have other options besides just buy and sell. And that's what we really want to do is we want to basically provide as much value. And really the goal is not just to have these local meetups, but also have educational sessions where we actually will teach you free of charge. We'll talk about different factors. We'll talk about capital raising. We'll talk about underwriting. We'll talk about finding good deals, talk about contracts, so forth and so forth. So we have already specialists in those areas that are going to be able to present. And I think we have a new one coming up here soon. What are the dates, Steve, and how can people that are watching it get more information
yeah.
about that?
So we have the underwriting Zoom with Alex Cameron, who's also one of our co-founders of Manifest Agents. Shout out to Alex. He's We have a tentative date for the underwriting 101 Zoom that will be, I believe it's August 23rd. And then Tabitha Jones, who's an astro flipper, Jamil Damji's, rock star within the astro flipping community. She's also a co-founder of the community, and she will host the agent outreach Zoom, and that's tentatively scheduled for August 30th. And so, and I know Dennis, I know we spoke. You will be doing your capital raising, which
Mhm.
is discussing how to raise capital, and we are looking for more leaders. This community is a full-blown collaboration effort. So if you're an agent and you are on another level, there is no ego within this community. The biggest way to grow in any industry is to be uncomfortable and to be surrounded by people who are doing certain things in the industry you want to succeed at a higher level than you are. And so if you are a leader and you feel like you can really contribute to our concept of what the vision of this community is, please reach out to Dennis or myself, and we would love to really collaborate with you in some way. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much what we got cooking up. We gotta do the James Harden cook. I
What
don't
an
know if I don't know if you
exciting.
watch basketball, Dennis, but that's the cook right there.
There you go. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Steve, for coming on Sunday and dropping some major jams. I mean, we talked about so many things today. We talked about, in the end, really, it's all about the community, right? People are not as successful when they're by themselves. And in most cases, people cannot really achieve much if they really only focus on doing things by themselves. We're in the world today, whether it's through Zoom, whether it's through social media, where there is so much opportunity to collaborate and help out people in the real estate agent space, I'll say, develop new channels how they can monetize and make funds. And that's what Manifest Agent is all about. So I'll post the links up here below, up here,
Yeah.
down below
Yeah.
for you to join. It is free, everyone. And we're very excited to have you in there. And like I said, the videos we're going to be putting out, the Zooms are going to be putting out, are people going to be able to join those and also ask questions?
Of course, of course. This is a full collaboration. Also, we are not perfect. We are going to fail forward with everyone. We are going to build this in collaboration with every member of this community. This is, we get feedback from the community. The reason why we're doing these Zooms is we ran a poll asking community members what topics they wanted to learn, and these were some of the top topics. So we are constantly evolving, improving based on the feedback that we get from community members. To join the community, it's simple. Go to manifestagents.com. That's plural, manifestagents.com. You can follow us on Instagram at manifestagents. You could also follow myself at Stephen Haring. So that's STEVENHARING. And let's find ways to really bring value to each other and help each other grow within this, within the real estate industry. So Dennis, I appreciate you bringing me on to your podcast. It is an honor. I can't wait for what we can achieve by collaborating with each other and with our other leaders within the community. And let's really build something special. I
Well,
want to let everybody know that, no matter what you're going through, no matter how you grew up, how you were raised, where you are in the present moment, you can most certainly change that by first changing your mindset, believing that you can. That's the very first step, and take massive action, just 1% better every day. And so, just want to
well,
say, thanks to my wife and my kids for being an inspiration, and that's pretty much it.
thank you so much for coming on today. And everybody who
Yeah,
watched this, please like and share this with somebody who is in the real estate space, that's looking to get into real estate space. And not much else to say. Steve, thank you so much for coming on. This is Dennis Rogoff signing off with
yeah.
the Real Estate Investors Roundtable. We will be back next Sunday with a new guest for the Real Estate Investors Roundtable. Until then, hope everybody is being productive and making deals. Take care until next time.
Take it easy.